Hey everybody, I'm Chuck. This is Jason. This is our buddy Teaser, and we're back again for our first bookend segment in 2022. So, first of all, I hope everyone had a happy holidays and a happy new year, and it's fun to be back, Jay.
Yep, happy new year. Looking forward to it. What a great time of year as we enter week 18, our first week 18, ever of the NFL, and moving forward into the playoffs. A lot of exciting stuff going on, and we've got a massive college football championship game coming up here, and I know you want to jump right into it.
Yeah, I think we knew when these two teams played about a month ago that somehow they were going to meet again in the national championship game. And in that game, it was a game that was dominated by Alabama, 41-24. They led at halftime. They outscored them in the second half as well. They threw for over 400 yards, over 500 yards in total offense against the best defense in the country, an overwhelmingly great defense. It only given up 6.5, I think, points per game. It jumped to 9.5 on average after that game. Kirby Smart, his mentor, is Nick Saban. He's 0-4 against his mentor. Now he gets him again. The national championship game opened in this game. Georgia, 2.5-point favorite. Public drove them up to 3. But I have to think, if you like Bama and under Saban, they're 5-1 in the role as an underdog, that the money line is going to be an attractive bet here with Alabama just getting a couple of points.
Yeah, and go back to that SEC championship game compared to what is now the national championship game. In that SEC championship game, we had a Georgia ranked number 1. Alabama was ranked number 2 at the time, but a loss by Alabama most likely knocks them out.
Oh, it would have knocked them out, right.
Being able to get into the college football playoff. So when we look at that SEC championship compared to this, much higher motivation from an Alabama standpoint in that SEC championship game to get themselves in the playoff. Georgia had basically secured a spot in the playoff. They had the playoff spot. They were playing to win the SEC championship, and obviously wanted to beat Notre Dame.
Knowing they could have knocked Bama out, though, and they might not be in this position where they have to play them again.
Absolutely, but I think from just a pure motivational standpoint, Alabama had their backs up against the wall, and that was a must-win game. Now, again, every game is a must-win game when we get to this type of standpoint, but in that spot, Alabama played great. They lost Mechie after that game, and so we're going to see a little bit less dynamic offense. We saw them beat Cincinnati 29-9, 29-6, something like that, but didn't have a huge offensive explosion that we did. That Cincinnati defense kind of stand up, played really well. Obviously, Alabama
it was almost like Cincinnati played not to lose. I mean, they just didn't open it up. You're the first non-5 power conference team to ever play in the college playoffs. I just expected, hey, we have nothing to lose. We're going to open it up. We're going to take chances. We're going to be creative, gadget plays, whatever we have to do. Just didn't see it from Cincinnati.
Yep, and then we saw on the other side, Georgia really completely dominate Michigan, able to shut that Michigan run game down. Michigan really wasn't able to do much through the air as well. That Georgia defense that we saw all year long that kind of had that lapse against Alabama was kind of back. And so Georgia comes in, and you said we're now a 3-point favorite against Alabama. Early money on Georgia. We've seen now more of the tickets since then being bet on Alabama. I think this
actually
is
64% is on Alabama right now. Tickets.
For me, the key to this game is that Georgia defense really allowed Bryce Young to go up and down the field in the SEC championship game. Didn't get a lot of pressure on him. I think again, anytime we see two teams play each other for a second time in a season in college football, I think you have to expect this game to be a little bit lower scoring than what we saw the first time with these defenses getting stuff on film. Obviously, without the receiver Mechie for Alabama, they're going to be really looking at Williams. Georgia's going to have to shut down Williams. But I think the key is Alabama getting that pressure on Bryce Young. And on the flip side, Stetson Bennett's going to have a monster game. I don't see Georgia being able to run the ball on Alabama. It's going to have to be the Brock Bowers to the tight end. And I'm really expecting a big game. I told you, Adonte Mitchell, wide receiver, 6'4" wide receiver, a freshman wide receiver from Georgia. Alabama does have some injuries at cornerback. They've got two of their starters that are going to be out for this game, so they've had to, you I guess, replace at Alabama. You just reload. So there's those guys that are always waiting to come in. But there's some young corners out on the edge that I expect Georgia to attack and look for the receiver Mitchell, Georgia, to have a big game.
I think, when you look at in the past, bowl games were an opportunity for so many players to kind of showcase their talent in their last collegiate game before they go to the combine and get involved in the draft and everything. This year, with so many guys, unfortunately, COVID played a role in it as well. But the new transfer protocol, guys opting out for the NFL, it just kind of changed the dynamic of, I think, a lot of these bowl games. So many coaches left. I mean, you had a game with Michigan State and Pitt where, two of the first-round talent, and Kenny Walker and Kenny Pickett, had opportunities to kind of showcase. They weren't there. No Strong for Nevada, and their coach left for Nevada as well. You saw an LSU Kansas State, which finished the bowl season. You saw that game open up 1 and close 10. It was just a little bit different than I think what we were used to in the past. I love bowl season. It's just not the same thing that you saw, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, from our side of the counter, from a bookmaking standpoint, very tough to book the bowl season. It's almost like booking preseason games in the NFL where you're trying to guess who's playing, who's not playing. And for the most part in college, we don't know who the guys are behind the starters or who their second and third string
you made a
guys
really good point when you said, like in Alabama's case or Ohio State's case, they just what you said, reload.
Well, we talked about
some smaller schools. That's not always the case.
Yeah, Ohio State specifically, Olave and Webster didn't play in the game, and they introduce us to Marvin Harrison Jr. and you watch Jackson Smith. You got Nagate go absolutely crazy.
Right?
So those big schools, they have those guys behind, and the smaller schools, we don't necessarily know how deep that depth chart goes. It just makes for some not good football. And from a betting standpoint, on the other side of the counter, they did great during this bowl season.
I think it's maybe the reaction from us, and I'd be the first to admit it wasn't quite as dramatic as maybe it should have been when we saw guys like that out. When Hamilton wasn't playing for Notre Dame and they had some other players out, I think there's still the hesitation there. Like, hey, it's just a player or two. The line's, 2, 2.5. Yet you see the bettors continue to bet against them. The LSU Kansas State game, I knew that, with the losses that LSU had and, basically a redshirt, freshman at quarterback, but I never expected the game to move basically 10 points. You even see that in pro football now. When a starting quarterback's out, that adjustment needs to be way more dramatic than just a couple of points. We saw some of the struggles with guys like with Glennon and Ian Book and guys that came in, and it is just the speed of the game, I think, is so quick. And again, you guys did phenomenal on the bowl games. It was really a good game, really a good season for the guests and bettors, but I think the adjustment needs to be probably bigger moving forward.
Well, and my question is, as we move forward into next year's bowl games, or as we move forward, how does college football fix this issue? We saw a Matt Corral from Mississippi.
They're not going to fix it with that.
He gets injured, in the first quarter, and then we have backup quarterback there, and so now players are going to look to that stuff and go, well, why am I going to play in these bowl games? It gives me a chance to be injured and affect my NFL draft status. So college has to fix that issue. We can't have the top talent in college football not playing in bowl games. We can't have coaches that have their teams headed to go to bowl games switching schools and not coaching in the bowl games. It just isn't. It isn't.
And all the transfer protocol
and the
transfer protocol happens before the bowl games.
Yep.
All these quarterbacks and key skill position players are leaving, and I agree with you on Matt Corral. I mean, this happens to be a year when we looked at last year's NFL draft. There was 5 surefire first round picks. We even talked about potentially 6, but we knew that there was going to be 5 that went potentially in the top maybe 10, 15, and very close to that. I think Mac Jones was just outside the top 15 or right at that plateau. But this year there isn't that surefire. Not that any of these kids won't become the next Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck, but when you look at all the McShay and Kiper and all these projections, the 2 highest rated quarterbacks are Kenny Pickett and Matt Corral right now, but neither one of them is in the top 10 and not even in the top 15. So maybe a great combine, a great showing in a bowl game helps elevate them. On the flip side, pro football is an extremely quarterback-driven league, and there is going to be at least a dozen teams that need quarterbacks this year. So a guy like Kenny Pickett or Corral with a good combine can elevate their stock, and somebody might roll the dice in the top 10 to take one of those guys because we've seen some of the poorer quarterback play this year.
Yeah, we talk about it in some of our good, the bad, the ugly.
Right.
But we could talk about poor quarterback play throughout the league. It drives the betting number, and what we do in setting the odds is so much based on what the quarterback is playing and how they're playing. So we look forward to these guys getting themselves in, and I know that we're looking forward to that NFL draft and seeing where these guys go. But just from a bowl standpoint, I think that whether it's the playoff or the bowls in general, we've got to get something to change in college football, because it really was a lackluster bowl season.
Right.
We'll call it.
I agree with you. I know when we'll get closer to the draft in April, we'll be talking about a bunch of draft props, but I'm going to say right now, watch Kenny Pickett to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Somehow. They let Marino get past them. They're not going to let Kenny Pickett go. I know we've kind of harped on a lot of the maybe the lackluster bowl games, but there was some really good bowl games too. Outside of the two playoff games, we talked about how exciting Purdue and Tennessee was, back and forth up and down the field. Notre Dame, Oklahoma State. Notre Dame had the big lead. Not a good game for us, as we were huge Irish fans. We were I think texting Shamrocks back and forth, and unfortunately we were a little bit premature in that. The Oklahoma Utah game was good. ASU Whiskey in our own backyard. Whiskey dominated early in that game, and then Oregon and Oklahoma. Those were kind of 5 or 6 really good bowl games as well.
Yeah, the Utah Ohio State Rose Bowl was absolutely fantastic. Great game to watch. Both teams going up and down the field. Stoops leading to Oklahoma.
Right, it's kind of fun, right?
It wasn't a very good game for us, but motivation standpoint to watch him go back and coach at Oklahoma and get a big win there, and watch Caleb Williams play really, really well, and now he's entered the transfer portal. But,
right.
So there was those good games, and again, we're big monster fans of college football, and so you want these games to be good, you want
right.
them to be competitive, and so there were a couple that were there, just frustrating from a standpoint of look at this bowl schedule and you say, hey, we're going to get college football from
right.
December
18th
basically, to January
right.
4th, and we got games every day, and then you watch a number of games get canceled due to COVID and teams that can't play, and then you have games that are just non-competitive, and it just became kind of steamrolled and frustrating bowl season.
Yeah, I think, again, the guys opting out and the transfer protocol, we just saw so many lines adjust dramatically. I know we've really kind of harped on a lot of the bad stuff in these bowl games, but again, Monday night, college football championship game, Bama, Georgia, the rematch of a game a month ago. It's a monster game. Coaches that have coached together, a mentor. It's going to be fun. There'll be a lot of props on the board.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to add a lot of props. As you see, we sit here today. Props will be starting to get added on player props and some special props and special point spreads. Look for that in your menu there on the STN Sports app.
Yeah, it's going to be a monster game. Looking forward to it. We're just finished our college football segment. We're going to come back with our second segment, and we're going to jump into pro football. As you mentioned, Week 18, unprecedented Week 18. More teams now in both conferences making the playoffs, and we're kind of going to go through it from top to bottom and see where we're at with everything. So we'll be right back on Bookends.
Damn, I look good. What's up, everybody? It's me, Stephen Money. It's football season, and I want you to know that you can bet on me, the STN Sports app. So sign up today and get started with me.
Hey everybody, we're back for our second segment of Bookends, and we're going to dive into pro football. And as Jay mentioned earlier, Week 18, unprecedented Week 18. I really thought there was going to be a slew of games that meant something. Unfortunately, not the case. I think a month ago, you had 24 or 26 teams still battling, just the way it kind of worked out the last month of the season, that it didn't work out, that it's kind of set right now. But we're going to go through kind of the AFC and NFC, kind of where they're seated right now, who they play, what the games impact, and we'll kind of have some fun with it. So Tennessee, number 1 seed in the AFC. Didn't think they would get into this spot, but Kansas City got beat by Cincinnati. Tennessee continues to win. There's a certain number 22 that has been at practice this week for them, which is huge, because if he's well-rested and he looks like he's in shape, wow, a well-rested Derrick Henry in the playoffs. This is a Tennessee team that beat the Colts twice this year, beat Buffalo, beat Kansas City, beat the Rams. So that resume is pretty impressive. Julio Jones might be back. A.J. Brown has been back and getting healthy. They might get some of their DBs back. 79% of the tickets are on them against the Texans, and they're the number 1 seed right now.
You know who they didn't beat this year?
Who?
The Texans.
You're right.
They lost to the Texans 22-13 in that first matchup. And
You're right.
This is a Houston team that's been out of it for quite some time, but continues to be competitive. Had a big win over the Los Angeles Chargers.
It's a Texans team that's, even though they're going to part with Deshaun Watson, and that's something we didn't talk about with the quarterbacks, we know he's going to be playing someplace else next year. But they say that they're happy with the progress and the improvement of Davis Mills, so they're not going to be looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he's had some good with Cooks and a young tight end, Brevin Jordan, who's actually from Las Vegas and played at Gorman. They've got some pieces on the offensive side of the football. It's really the defense that's been poor. They're the most rushed-on team, I think, in the NFL. They really have a struggle stopping teams in the secondary. So big monster game here for the Titans, obviously, to be able to get this number 1 seed, get that bye, get Derrick Henry, continue to rebuild that leg.
He gets 2 weeks of practice then.
It would be monstrous for them. We have gotten some sharp action on the Texans at plus 10.5. As we sit today, the Titans are still double-digit favorites, but this is a team that they didn't knock off during the regular season, so the Texans do have some confidence playing the Titans.
And don't forget, it's the Texan team that just a few weeks ago at home knocked off the Chargers.
Sure.
That Raider-Charger game, which we'll talk about, wouldn't mean anything had the Chargers not lost that game. So big game for the Titans. The number 2 seed right now is Kansas City. They let that one get away from them. We talked about probably the 2 toughest places in all of football to play. AFC would be Arrowhead, and the NFC would probably be Lambeau. 85% of the tickets are on them against Denver. I don't know what you get out of Denver. When you look at, up and down the board, there are so many guys that are injured. There's a chance that Drew Lock doesn't play right now. Bridgewater's already been put on IR. It would be Brett Rippon then. The number's double digits now. I have to think if that's the case, it's going to go up. And I think Kansas City would do a little bit of scoreboard watching. I mean, why would you leave Mahomes and Kelsey and Hill out there if Tennessee is up, double digits at halftime in that game?
Well, we saw Kansas City. They were really the hottest team in football. I think they were up to an 8-game win streak, absolutely playing fantastic. Go to Cincinnati and kind of run into the Jamar Chase,
Joe Burrow show.
Chase with the really long receptions and played really well. And there was, you go deeper into that game. I think that Jason Simbal was telling me that that was one of the games that you had to look at some of the calls that were being made. I think a 60% disadvantage to the Chiefs on some of the calls that were made in favor of the Bengals from a penalty standpoint. So it made it really, really difficult for the Chiefs to overcome, obviously, the play of Burrow and Chase and then add those penalties on top of it. But a huge win for the Bengals. But I think the Chiefs, this is a spot where they wanted that bye week. They wanted that number 1. But Denver's a team that they've historically been able to take care of on the back end, and Mahomes has a lot of success passing against that Denver defense.
I apologize. I misspoke. Actually, the Chiefs game is Saturday. I forgot that there is one of the 2 games Saturday, so they won't be scoreboard watching at that point.
The one thing that's the development of the Chiefs is with Clyde Edward-Helaire being out and Tyreek Hill and then Kelsey, you're starting to see Byron Pringle and Cole Hardman and Gore. So you're starting to see some guys that on those supplemental pieces for the Chiefs.
Since they lost Watkins, they've kind of needed that role.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit of development that's happening, and I think that's only going to help them moving forward, is that they got a couple more pieces of the puzzle that Mahomes can rely on.
Again, 85% of the tickets are on them. The next game, the next seed in the AFC is Cincinnati, which I think before the season started, you could have made the case that Cleveland was going to win the division again. They just looked like they were loaded. Cincinnati, you didn't know what you were going to get. It's kind of upside down for me that Cincinnati won the division and Cleveland finished last. But this is a game that Baker Mayfield's already announced he's having surgery. He's actually having surgery the 19th of this month. It looks like they're going to be without Hunt, without Johnson, without a slew of guys in that game. And in Cincinnati's case, they were the favorite, and then now it's no Joe Burrow. Mixon is in COVID protocol. So this game is currently down right now, and not sure what the number is going to settle in on because neither one of these 2 teams really has anything to play for. And I think in Cincinnati's case, Burrow got hurt late in that game against Kansas City. He could have gone back in again, but hey, he's been banged up a little bit too. He had major knee surgery a year ago. Get him that extra rest too. But it's a Cincinnati team right now that I don't think anybody wants to see in the postseason. They can score a ton. Granted, they give up a lot, but that offense is pretty dynamic.
Yeah, and I'm sure Cincinnati doesn't want to have to sit any of those guys because they want to stay hot. They want to stay playing at that incredible level. But again, this is what Week 18 always presents itself with, is that these scenarios.
Wait a minute.
Where
Week 18 always can can't present itself with this because the first
the
one.
Week 17, Week 18, that last
Right.
week of the season always presents itself with this
Right.
scenario of we really don't need to play for anything. Why are we risking getting our guys hurt? Or are we playing to stay hot and continue to work on our game and not get rusty? So as we go through all these games, you're going to face those scenarios. And we're going to find a couple of games this week where you see a team that's favored in a first half,
Right.
but they're dogs in the game because we expect them to play their guys maybe the first quarter or through the first half and not expect those guys to play in the second half. So you're going to see those weird fluctuations.
We hear
in the
these
lines.
things all, every year, Week 17 and now Week 18, that yes, so this team is playing their guys. We're absolutely playing their guys, and we feel like there's no way. And then by the time Sunday rolls around, all this information comes out, and there's a dramatic shift in the line because they're not playing.
Yeah, and the other thing is you want to, this week, I always tell people the one big thing is to get that STN Sports app and be ready to play second halves because when you look at the way games are going, starters not
We're
playing.
not going to lock the second halves out?
There's a lot of potential
Yep.
unders in second
There is.
halves with teams just kind of running the clock out and doing, getting their season over with as we move forward to the
Yep.
back end of Week 18.
All right, the number 4 seed, which, probably through the first maybe month and a half of the season was the number 1 seed. And that was kind of the team that when we did the AFC NFC, which has been up for a long time right now as well, it's kind of ping pong back and forth, the prop. AFC, NFC, 1.5. I think it was always based on Buffalo through the first 6 weeks of the season. Really kind of stubbed their toe, struggled, was able to still win the division, or it looks like they're going to win the division. They're huge favorites, almost 3-score favorites against the Jets. Killed the Jets earlier this season. Only 52% of the tickets are on Buffalo, though. I think it's because of that big number. And if they get up big, do you leave a Josh Allen, a Stephon Diggs, all those guys on the field late in the game? But Buffalo's the number 4 seed, big favorite, and 52% of the
they're
tickets.
still, from a power rating standpoint, they're still sitting atop the AFC. Despite the fact that they're coming in here at the number 4 seed, they're still going to be, from a standpoint of head-to-head versus the rest of these teams, they're going to be the favorite, or obviously if they travel on the road, they're going to be a small dog.
Personally, I think the AFC's loaded. The top 7 teams that make the playoffs in the AFC, it's not going to surprise me if any of those teams are, moving on to play in February. The AFC's loaded, I think.
In this game, we saw the Jets play really, really hard against the Bucks this past week. Gave them a really scare. I'm not sure what Robert Saleh was thinking in not kicking a field goal to take a 7-point lead late in that game. Didn't kick the field goal, and then of course Brady goes down the field, leads the team to the win. But the Jets have played hard. They've been out of it for quite some time, so this is no a damper on their season that they're now out of the playoffs. So they should continue to see the same kind of playing hard, and can they cover the almost 17 points here against the Bills?
Again, to your point, I think they'll be up early in the game, but during the second half, they've got to not leave those guys on the field.
And Josh Allen hasn't looked. He ran the ball effectively well.
3 interceptions
against
last
Atlanta,
week,
but 3 interceptions against the Falcons. Again, the game was kind of in a frosted field, so who knows how the ball was sliding out of his hands. But we'll check. One thing obviously as we sit here the first week of January is make sure you're checking weather and know the weather in your games as well.
So the number 5 seed is the Patriots. They play at New England.
At Miami.
At Miami, I'm sorry. Kind of an anomaly here is that they could actually be the number 1 seed or the number 7 seed. They'll definitely be doing some scoreboard watching, no question at all. They're still a really good team. They like to run the ball a lot. Miami beat them early in the season. I think it was week 1 here, but they would be somebody I think that would be doing some scoreboard watching with the game in Buffalo.
Yeah, and Miami has no playoff hopes. They're essentially out of things in the AFC, so they can only play spoiler here, and I expect that they will.
But I think it's important for them to do that. They want to
they're
build
going
on.
to continue to play hard here. We've seen incredible development of Jalen Waddle this year. Mike Gesicki is a fantastic tight end. They've got a slew of running backs that they're doing things with there. Tua,
good defense
developing,
too. Really good.
And that's the one thing, that defense loves to blitz. They love to put things up front, so they're not going to let New England just run the ball down them throats, and they're going to attack Mac Jones, so he can see if he can beat him with some of these young receivers that he's been developing over the last couple of weeks.
Yep. So I think interesting for New England too with that, and they like to run the ball. So here, number 6 seed, Colts. I think they can beat anybody in the playoffs. I think anybody wants to face them. They had a bad loss last week to the Raiders. They're huge favorites as well, almost 3-score favorites on the road at Jacksonville. Kind of an interesting stat here, Jay. They haven't won at Jacksonville since 2014, which is kind of hard to believe that it's been that long. They lost last year, I think it was opening day in Jacksonville. This is a Colts team, though, that I think there's maybe 2 or 3 teams that aren't in the top 4 in either conference that nobody wants to play in the postseason because they have the ingredients to beat anybody, and that's Jonathan Taylor. That they can run the ball, control the clock. They need good play out of Carson Wentz. But I think they're a scary good team.
Yeah, Leonard in the linebacker, getting him back, getting some of their guys back on defense. A bad loss for them against the Raiders last week, but whether it's Urban Meyer or no Urban Meyer, the Jacksonville Jaguars have been bad. They allowed 50 points. The Patriots put up 50 points on them last week. So this could be a game that the Colts should be able to handle and do what they need to do. And this has implications. This is one of the major games from a Week 18 standpoint that if somehow Jacksonville can pull an upset, then it really dramatically affects what's going to be the Sunday night game with the Raiders and Chargers. But fully expect that the Colts can go out and ground and pound here and be able to beat Jacksonville.
Yeah. So Raiders and Chargers, I mean, for me, playoffs don't start next week. They start Sunday night. This is a playoff game. It's in our backyard. I think it's exciting. The Raiders kick off the season on Monday Night Football. They beat Baltimore here. They've been playing playoff football, though, for the last month. I mean, after that bad loss that they had to Kansas City, they've won 3 straight games. They had to go on the road and win some of those games. They went to Indy and won. They've really circled the wagons. It's been a team with saw their coach resign, unfortunate off-field distractions, but they're at home in Allegiant Stadium, new black hole, Raider Nation. It's going to be fun. I think this is a Charger team, though, that they beat them earlier in the season. The Raiders were the last undefeated team, played at L.A. on Monday Night Football, trailed 21-0 in that game before making it competitive and losing, I think, 28-14. Early action has been on the Chargers. They drove this number up, but ticket counts are at 53% favoring the Raiders. Curious to see who we need when they kick off. I think they're going to come back, and we're going to see a big push on the Raiders in this game. But again, for me, playoff starts Sunday night in our backyard here. It's exciting to have that game flex to Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, and doing a little bit deeper dive into the numbers here, I was surprised. Well, not surprised, but the Chargers being essentially a field goal favorite over the Raiders here in Las Vegas. I expected that number to be a little bit short. I expected to be getting Raider money, but diving a little bit deeper into the numbers, one of the big problems for the Raiders has been on that back end in that secondary. Specifically, the Raiders play a lot of zone defense. They're a zone defense scheme. They don't play a lot of man-to-man. And the other things the Raiders don't do a lot of is they don't blitz. They like to see if they can get the pressure up front with Crosby and the other guys, so they don't send a lot of linebackers and safeties on blitzes. Justin Herbert is great at 2 things. He's great at passing against the zone, and he's great at passing against teams that don't blitz. So the 2 things that Herbert struggles with is man-to-man coverage and teams that blitz, both things that the Raiders don't like to do. So that's why you're seeing that number up, continue to go kind of towards the Chargers, because that's we talk about Justin Herbert being one of those quarterbacks that has great games and then has kind of those real clunkers. Well, if you go back and kind of look, he has clunkers against teams that play man-to-man and blitz a lot on him. 2 things the Raiders don't do.
This is a Charger team, too, if they did win this game, that they're a team I don't think anybody wants to face in the postseason. They really should have beaten the Chiefs twice. They're a good team. It's just they're kind of that Jekyll and Hyde team right now that you don't know what Charger team's going to show.
Just going back 2 weeks, this is a team that lost to the Houston Texans. So they do have the ability to throw those clunkers in there, and it usually is on Justin Herbert's arm.
So now we're going to jump into the NFC. The number 1 seed's the Packers. To me, this is the most bizarre, line and game. Everything you hear is, Aaron Rodgers is playing, Devontae Adams is playing. The Packers opened up, say, prior to Sunday night's game, they were an 11-point favorite before they won Sunday night against Minnesota. It comes back out. Now they're number 1 seed. They've clinched. It's 1.5-2. It's kind of at 4 right now. But I don't understand why. Because why would you play Rodgers 1 snap? He's got a broken toe. You get him that extra time to rest. You get Adams time to rest. You get Aaron Jones a little bit banged up, time to rest. Bakhtiari's been beat up this year. You get these guys rest. You're the Packers. You're a veteran team. Why they're saying that these guys are going to play, I don't get. I still think by Sunday morning, the Lions go off the favorite because all these guys aren't playing.
Yeah, and we don't have the game up right now because of all the things that you're talking about. And 4 is not a correct number if everybody's playing. It's not a correct number
if everybody's
out. So it's kind of a middle of the road guessing game. And my only thought process here is they are the number 1 seed. They're not playing next week. And so if you don't play the guys this week and then you take a week off next week, you've gone now 3 weeks before playing football, and that leads to the rust and just game
But
speed
it's
and
Aaron
that type
Rodgers.
of stuff.
He's probably going to be the two-time defending MVP. I mean, I just it's not a young quarterback, and I think in his case you do have to factor in the age part. Believe me, if you're Tom Brady and you're in this situation, you want that rest. I think Rodgers would want it. And he's got the broken toe.
Bad toe. Aaron Jones has been banged
Right.
up. Devontae Adams, we see him all the time. So I'm in your camp.
And I
think that they rest these guys.
I know what you're saying, but say he even plays a quarter, and it's a non-eventful quarter, but at some point, either one of his linemen, a defensive player, steps on that toe, or something happens, and he is hurt and couldn't play in the playoffs. The entire complexion of the NFL playoffs changes on one play. From a team that right now is the favorite to hoist the Lombardi, the Packers. So I don't. It makes no sense to me.
Well, that's why we have the game down, because
Right.
we're waiting to see kind of what the official word and what is our expectation of who's playing and who's not.
So number 2 seed now is the Rams. They're playing the 49ers. They're hosting the Niners, who beat them up pretty good on a primetime game earlier this season, 31-10. 54% of the tickets are on the Rams right now. Rams win this game. They're the number 2 seed. 49ers are in right now at number 7. They win this game. They stay a wild card team, but they make the playoffs. The big key here is Jimmy G. I thought Trey Lance played well last week, especially in the second half. But if Jimmy Garoppolo can play in this game, I think it really helps the 49ers a lot.
Yeah, and to say Trey Lance played well, they were playing that Houston Texans team that we talked about on the defensive side of the football. Struggles to do everything kind of mostly on the defensive side. So, but we saw Elijah Mitchell have a really good game from a running back standpoint. Didn't get the ball that much to Ayuk and Kittle and those guys.
Jeff Wilson.
Debo Samuel obviously
Right.
has been that monster both in the receiving game and the running game. Their defense is coming along, and this is they're in the playoffs right now. But if they were to lose this game, it gives the Saints the ability to kind of jump in and steal that spot. So a big game for them. We talked about how they dominated the Rams, and on the Rams side of things, with Stafford struggling last week in Baltimore, saw the Ravens pick him off several times. They were able to go back and steal that game late. Again, Cooper Kupp continues his magical
Phenomenal,
season,
right.
and you can tell that there's development with Odell Beckham Jr. as well. So the Rams do have things kind of coming along, and I expect to see this team make some moves in the playoffs or make some waves in the playoffs.
So the number 3 seed's the Bucks. They just played Carolina a few weeks ago. They won 32-6. The highest ticket count on any team is Tampa at 91%. I don't think they'll have anybody that takes off their jersey and their cleats and is disrobing on the sideline as a distraction in this game. Bucks are number 3. They can't really improve that much either. I guess they'd scoreboard watch a little bit to see what happens with the Rams, but they're a big favorite here too. And I think probably no quarterback and no team more than them would want the extra week off. You get Mike Evans more time to rest, Fournette time to rest, and of course Brady time to rest. But doesn't look like that's going to happen, and they're a big favorite against Carolina.
Yeah, they destroyed just 2 weeks ago. Absolutely destroyed the Panthers, 32-6. So they've got the wherewithal to go in and kind of do whatever they want in this game, be able to beat the Panthers. The Panthers have really struggled, whether it's Darnold,
Cam Newton, PJ Walker. Yep.
It doesn't matter really what they do. They've not been able to find any really semblance of offense. So this is, I think that the Bucks want to play this week to get a little bit more of semblance of Brady to these younger receivers, whether it's Johnson or Perriman. He's going to need those guys in the playoffs.
Right.
With those guys being out,
their only healthy running
Godwin.
back might be Le'Veon Bell.
Yep.
So it's but they're the number 3 seed. Number 4 seed. This is a Saturday game as well. It's Cowboys-Eagles, and this is kind of one of those games that who's going to play, really? Cowboys are the 4th seed. Would you play Dak?
And they're pretty much locked into the
Would you
4th
play
seed.
Dak because of the injuries that he has? Micah Parsons is now in COVID protocol. We know Zeke's been beat up all year. You lose Michael Gallup last week, although Cedric Wilson can jump in, but do you want to risk a CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper getting hurt? On the other side, the Eagles, I mean, maybe they can move up a slot.
Minshew show.
You're right. I mean, Hurts has been banged up all year, too. He missed a number of games. Eagles have a dozen players in COVID protocol. This is a game, too, that I think you're going to see. It is up where the Cowboys are a touchdown favorite, where I think you're going to see a line adjusted dramatically on Saturday when you hear all these Eagle guys aren't playing. Now, the Eagles, the bettors have backed them probably for 6 or 7 of the last 8 weeks. They love this Eagle team. The Cowboys, for me, I think are the one team, if you looked at and said, who can beat the Packers? I think they can. They can run the ball. They play great defense with Diggs and Lawrence and Parsons. And if you need Dak Prescott to step up and score offensively, they can. But the key to me is their defense. They are really good defensively. They're the number 4 seed here. And, 53% of tickets are on the Eagles, which I still think, I agree. Gardner Minshew show, and this line changes dramatically.
Yeah, I don't expect the Eagles to play very many of their guys, especially not Hurts, with the fact that
No
he's
reason
still
to.
recovering from those injury. I don't trust any. I was really surprised they flexed this game to
Right.
the Saturday game with the fact that we're expecting to see a lot of guys sit in this game. And you talk about the Cowboys and Eagles, potentially as threats. The NFC East teams, to me, you've gotten to beat up on the Washington football team and the Giants all year long, and it's really, really difficult to trust these teams and know which games they're going to come
I think
out
the
and play.
Cowboys only have 2 wins against teams with winning records this year. But I still think they have the ingredients.
They have the tools. The
to win,
defense,
right.
the defense looks great at times. The offense looks great at times. If the defense and offense can put it together and play their best games at the same time, this team could do damage. It's just the fact that we see them play their best games, and we see them play their best games against a lot of bad football teams. We don't see them play those best games against really good teams.
I mean, if somehow
the fact that the Cardinals, who have been playing not very good football over the last 5 or 6 weeks, went into Dallas and were able to kind of dominate that game was really bad.
With Dallas being the number
Cowboys
2
standpoint.
seed at that point. I agree. So after that,
that could be a matchup that we see next week, as the Cardinals
Yep.
and Cowboys could match up again. And that Kyler Murray, with a weird stat that he
8-0.
he's undefeated in AT&T
high school,
Stadium.
collegiate, and pro, undefeated, right? If somehow the Cowboys and Packers did meet up in the playoffs, it'd be interesting because you've got Mike McCarthy going back to Green Bay. We've talked about the number 6 seed is Philly. We've talked about them against Dallas. 7 seed we've talked about as well. San Francisco plays the Rams. The team on the outside looking in right now, and that's the Saints. Lot of injuries this year. They're a small favorite against Atlanta, a little over a field goal. They lost at home to Atlanta a few weeks ago, 27-25, a win, and they would be in the playoffs right now. They've got to be scoreboard watching a little bit, knowing that San Francisco is an underdog to the Rams, and they're a favorite here against Atlanta. I just don't know. I think it's a good spot for Atlanta again because the Saints just don't score.
I'm praying for all the teams at the top to do what they're supposed to do so that we don't have to see the Saints in the playoffs because that offense has been just atrocious to watch. They play games on the defensive side of the football, but, Alvin Kamara with Hill and Simeon and Ian Book, what they've done over the last 5 weeks, they're a tough team to cheer for and want to see in the playoffs because they really don't do anything on the offensive side of the football.
So every free agent quarterback should be sending their resume to Sean Payton,
Yes,
I
they
would
should.
think. So that kind of wraps up the pros. It is week 18. It's a week of, I guess, uncertainties, a good word to use right now, because there is going to be a lot of stuff that changes between now and kickoff Saturday and Sunday, and then as Jay alluded to, going into the second half of a lot of those games. So
still doing a lot of props. You got a lot of player props up. All the team props will be up. So everything that we do throughout the regular season is still available for week 18. Your parlay cards are going to be out. So full force play these week 18 games, and even more so get ready for the that college football championship.
Right, and then the wild card round when it comes up, 2 extra games, so it'll be fun. That first wild card weekend, you've got 2 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and a Monday nighter as well. So we'll be back for our final segment, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in just a few minutes.
Locals, here's how easy it is to start betting on games with the STN Sports app. They have sign-up locations across Las Vegas, so no matter where you are, you're less than 5 minutes away from getting started. They have convenient withdrawal and deposit options, so you can access your money at any time, even from the comfort of home. And once you're in, you're in. You can bet on all major sports even as the action is happening with a huge in-play wagering menu. So download the STN Sports app today and get started betting with the local favorite for over 40 years.
Hey gang, we're back for, I know, Jay and my favorite segment. John does a great job of putting that music together in the background. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to go good, and it's it warms all of our hearts. It's hockey, and there's a certain number 29 who's coming back Saturday night. Marc-Andre Fleury will hopefully be between the pipes for the Chicago Blackhawks when they take on our Vegas Golden Knights. And I have to imagine that just the crowd, the energy, the atmosphere, the love, the warmth in that building will be electric. It'll be a playoff atmosphere. I'm hoping we're going to be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. There's some props up about how many saves he'll have, how many goals allowed, but more importantly, I mean, he still is the Vegas Golden Knights. I think you're going to see more Marc-Andre Fleury Hawks and Knights jersey that night than everybody else combined. It's going to be a magical night, and being a sports fan, and especially a hockey fan, and you and I both being from Chicago, I think it is really the good that we get an opportunity to see Marc-Andre Fleury back in T-Mobile on Saturday night.
Yeah, looking forward to his appearance, and the game will be an absolute sellout, and the crowd will be going nuts and cheering for Flower, and I'm sure the team has got an incredible video that we're going to see, remembering what he did
Right.
for the Knights in the franchise. Blackhawks have not been playing particularly well, allow a lot of goals, allow a lot of shots, so that's why that props up there with the 33 saves for Fleury and 3 goals allowed. However, the Knights, again, struggling. We just saw them lose to Nashville, didn't look particularly well. We've got another kind of comeback on Thursday with the Rangers returning to town.
Right.
Gallant and Reeves will be making their return to T-Mobile, and then Fleury on
It's
Saturday.
homecoming week
yeah,
at T-Mobile.
It's kind of a homecoming. The boys coming back to
Right.
T-Mobile. So a lot of stuff going on in those Knights games. So get your tickets, get out to the Knights games, and enjoy those games. And have some
It
fun.
really will be one of the magical nights, though, on Saturday night.
I'm going to go to my good. I'm going to go to the Ohio State wide receivers against Utah. Jackson Smith, Nagate. We saw Marvin Harrison Jr.'s son make an appearance in the bowl game with the other guys being out, and those receivers were absolutely fantastic. I think Jackson Smith had 15 receptions, over 300 yards receiving, and just kind of made their mark on moving forward.
Absolutely.
And we talk about putting up next year's Heisman Trophy, and Bryce Young, we're seeing him as a pretty much consistent, prohibitive favorite to win the Heisman at
Not
2-1.
so fast, though.
No one's won back-to-back Heisman's.
Archie Griffin at 74 and 75, who he's viewed as one of the greatest college football players ever, but he's the last. He's the only two-time and repeat champion.
Yeah, so Bryce Young will looks to be the favorite everywhere, but it's not. When we open it up, it's not going to be Bryce Young being our favorite on that Heisman 2022 board. It's going to be C.J. Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback, with what we see, the talent that he has coming back in his receiving core, Henderson in the backfield, and what Ohio State likes to do on offense. Really think C.J. Stroud should be at the top of that Heisman board, followed by Young, and then Caleb Williams, who is the young freshman at Oklahoma, who really expect to kind of be sitting in that third favorite spot. Just entered the transfer portal.
Although he said he might return to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's not a done deal yet.
Played a big game for them in their bowl game, had a big win, and to finish the season after Spencer Rattler had transferred. But we'll see where he ends up back at Oklahoma, or if he maybe goes to UCLA with the Dylan Gabriel getting out of UCLA and announcing he's going to Oklahoma. So look for that Heisman Trophy stuff to come up. But really awesome game from the good standpoint of the Ohio State wide receivers.
Yeah, totally agree. Now we're going to look at bad. And I know we've talked about it a little bit, but really I think it's some of the quarterback play that we've seen in professional football. We've seen the struggles of Baker Mayfield. I mean, just the amount of turnovers over the last couple of weeks, that game against Pittsburgh. I mean, Ian Book, Mike Glennon. I mean, there has just been some really poor play at the quarterback position in pro football. I mean, from our end, and I know from the guest end, it's difficult to handicap. I mean, there is such a drop-off from some of those guys. That's why I think heading into the offseason, if it's a Mitchell Trubisky, if it's a Gardner Minshew, if it's an Andy Dalton, a Nick Foles, if it's Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral, there's going to be a lot of jobs open in pro football right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that carousel goes around, but quarterback play for the most part for me this year has been really poor.
Yeah, we got to see the Ben Roethlisberger, potentially leaving Heinz Field in his last game at Heinz and a big win. And that night for me just was ruined by how bad Baker Mayfield played. I mean, he looked like he was playing his first professional game, getting multiple balls down, batted at the line. Watt and that's the
Pittsburgh. Surprising part. He's not a rookie. I mean, you've got to find the lanes of where you can throw.
He was awful in every facet of the game, and again, it's not all on him. That Cleveland offensive line just could not control the defensive pass rush for the Steelers. And earlier in the day, or on Sunday, that was Monday night, Trevor Lawrence, who came out of college and #1 pick, and it's been a rough season for him in Jacksonville. But watching this game in New England, he's just. They're just flat out bad. Just bad throws.
Mike Glennon.
Not hitting his receivers. I think he set 2 records this year, broke 2 records this year, and they were his own record, of number of pass completions without throwing a touchdown pass.
Right.
I think he got it up to like 191 passes without throwing a touchdown pass. So I know there's a lot of work that has to be done down in there in Jacksonville, but just really bad play from the quarterback position. And you could go team by team by team, and talk about bad quarterback play. We talk about the Carolina Panthers. We talk about the Denver Broncos.
I think in the Giants case, Glennon was able to throw for a whopping negative 10 yards. That I think he broke the record from Ryan Leaf from like 1998 or something that he had. I mean, it's crazy that the quarterback play has just been so miserable.
Yeah, and we set lines. So much of what we do in setting lines and setting the lines for the games is based on who's the quarterback. And some of these teams, we just got to find some new guys to step up. And we talk about a Gardner Minshew who's on the bench in Philadelphia in a backup position, or Mitchell Trubisky on the bench in a backup position in Buffalo. Will these guys find another chance to get a start? And the big name out there, Deshaun Watson, where will he end up, and will he be playing in the NFL next year? We got to get these guys back just for the health of the game and the health of some of these teams to play a little bit more competitive football.
I think we've mentioned all these guys. There's one name that we didn't mention, and you're right, Watson. He's going to be playing someplace else. I think the domino that could affect so much is Russell Wilson. Did he play his last game in Seattle last week? Is this his last game with Seattle this week on the road? The Bears tried to get him last year. Some other teams have. A team like the Giants has assets that they could acquire him. If Russell Wilson moves, I mean, where does he move to? And does Aaron Rodgers move as well? And there's
Love there.
It's going to be really interesting, I think, this offseason. Maybe there's some kind of cool props we can work on and put up about all this movement with quarterbacks. But there's a good 12 to 14 teams that need a quarterback. We just named maybe 5 or 6 guys, but we don't know if they're going to move for sure. Some of them.
And the breaking news right now is Justin Fields has now got COVID, so he won't be starting for the Bears this week against the Vikings. And there's 2 other guys. I don't know how much longer Nick Foles has, but Andy Dalton's another guy that was a starter in this league and could find
Foles
his way
too, right, yeah.
to be a starter with some of the other teams.
It was going to be kind of an ironic twist, but the Bears would have, in successive weeks, they would have started Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, and Justin Fields. But unfortunately, Fields isn't going to get the start. Would have loved to seen him get some work in against Minnesota. We had a lot to talk about this week, a lot to cover, guys. Don't forget.
I'm ugly.
What? Oh, the ugly. I'm sorry.
Ugly. I've been waiting.
Quarterbacks, they could be the bad and the ugly.
I've been waiting for my ugly all week, and it would be too easy to go to the Antonio Brown saga down in Tampa.
It would.
As the ugly. Just a crazy scene that we saw on the field there, and obviously the follow-up of what's going on, and we'll see how this affects the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and if Antonio Brown ends up, back in the league at any point. But what a crazy Sunday afternoon of learning of that saga and watching it play out on the field there in New York. But I'm going to go a little bit deeper and hate to pick on a young man that's in college, but watching the Notre Dame-Oklahoma State game, and I know that a lot of you watched the game and a lot of comments that are out there on Twitter. Notre Dame takes a 28-7 lead. Cohen looks absolutely amazing. They're throwing the ball all over the field. Late in that second half, Martin and Spencer Sanders are able to kind of identify a weakness in that Notre Dame defense, and cornerback number 6, Clarence Lewis, just really struggled end of the second quarter and the third quarter and the fourth quarter. Go back and watch that game. Spencer Sanders picks on Clarence Lewis every play. He ends up leading the Notre Dame with 10 tackles on the day, but that's because every ball was thrown his way. And so every time that Oklahoma State offense threw the ball left, lot of incompletions, not a lot of yards gained, but every time they threw to the right, they were really picking on Clarence Thomas, and just yards after yards, big play after big play, 3 touchdown passes to Martin, all on that right-hand side of the field, all with Clarence Thomas in coverage. And Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, big signing, big, huge coach. Look forward to the future of Notre Dame, but man, they didn't make any defensive adjustments.
Right.
They just let the young man hang out to dry out there, and he just wasn't able to make plays. Big pass interference calls, play after play after play, allowed Oklahoma State to come all the way back in that game, get a 37-35 victory, basically on the play of one defensive secondary and cornerback that were unable to make any stops.
Very true. I mean, I think there's a lot that we could, we've covered today, and a lot of good stuff that we've talked about. And as you can tell, we could probably make this segment, double the time of this week going into Week 18. With everything that's going on right now, you got the Knights game, you got NBA, college hoops, football. The playoffs are right around the corner. What a great time to get signed up for STN Sports. Still have up to a $100 bonus going on right now. $50 deposit gets you that cool hat. Not that far away from that big game in February either. So great time to have the app. We're excited to be back. Happy New Year to you guys again. It's always fun to be here at Sunset Station and do our bookend segment here with John and Jason, our buddy Teaser. I'm Chuck. You guys, Happy New Year again, and we'll see you guys next week on Bookends.